Previously, Jason had barely escaped room 13 at Club Number 13 in Las Vegas, running out into the cold alley with his friends, pale and shaking, convinced that the shadows and the whispered voices inside would have claimed him if he had stayed even a second longer. The VIP room had revealed glimpses of horrors that were impossible to describe, mirrors showing twisted versions of himself, shadows that moved of their own accord, and a presence so heavy and sinister that the very air seemed alive with malice. And now, days later, Jason could not shake the feeling that something had followed him, that the club itself was not content with only terrifying him inside the walls, that it had somehow reached out into the world outside. He could feel it when he walked the streets, neon lights of the strip flashing off the wet asphalt after a rare desert rain, the distant hum of casinos and traffic unable to drown out the faint whispers in his mind, every reflective surface, every mirror, even the glass on store windows seemed to ripple and pulse as if room 13 was watching him, waiting for him to make a mistake. And it began on the night after his escape, when he returned home and thought that simply closing the door behind him, shutting out the world and the memory of the club, would be enough to feel safe. But as he walked into his apartment, he noticed the faint smell of perfume mixed with something metallic, like iron, lingering in the air. He tried to brush it off, thinking perhaps he had brought it on his jacket or shoes, but then the mirror in his hallway caught his attention, fogged slightly, and he saw a shadow behind him, one that mimicked the movements of his own reflection, except the head was tilted at an unnatural angle, eyes black voids, staring, and he froze, unable to speak. The presence that had followed him seemed patient but hungry. Jason could feel the pulse of the room change as if it were alive, a slow heartbeat, resonating through the floorboards and walls. And every object, every piece of furniture seemed to shift imperceptibly, closer than it had been before, and he could hear faint whispers again, names and laughter, screams that were just below the threshold of perception, memories of people who had vanished in room 13 decades ago, their voices mixing with the shadows. He wanted to leave, to run outside into the streets where the neon lights and the sound of people should have comforted him, but the moment he stepped forward, the front door slammed shut on its own, keys turning in the lock that he had never touched, and the room darkened further, the windows seeming to absorb the streetlight, leaving him in semi-darkness, the shadows stretching along the walls, flickering like flames, and then the mirrors everywhere, pulsed with a strange black liquid, dripping slowly down the glass, and as he watched, the liquid formed shapes, the outlines of men and women, distorted, clawing at the inside of the glass, trying to escape, to reach him, and Jason's mind began to race, questioning his sanity, recalling every warning, every detail the dancer and the bouncer had given him, realizing now that escaping room 13 had only been the first stage. The next was living with its hunger for fear, its reach beyond the club walls. He tried to scream, but the sound died in his throat, muffled as if swallowed by an invisible hand, and then, suddenly, the clock struck midnight, the hour when room 13's power was said to be strongest, and the shadows surged, moving independently of the walls, crawling toward him, the mirrors showing scenes from the room, as if he was trapped in a looping nightmare, watching himself fall to his knees, hear the whispers, and feel the icy grip on his shoulders over and over again. Jason's phone lay on the table, but when he reached for it, it slipped through his fingers, as if repelled by some invisible force, and then the shadows coalesced in the center of the room, forming a figure impossibly tall, dressed in tattered, dark clothing, featureless face except for eyes that glowed red. The figure's presence made the floor vibrate beneath him, his heart pounding so loud he thought it might explode. The whispers rose into a cacophony, "Stay. Join. Forever," and Jason realized that no one could hear him, no one could save him if he succumbed now, his mind a battlefield between rational thought and pure terror. He stumbled back toward the hallway mirror, hoping to confront the reflection, to anchor himself to reality, but what he saw was another Jason, pale, hollow-eyed, grinning maliciously, raising its hands to pull him in, and in that instant, Jason felt an invisible force shove him backward, the room expanding, the walls breathing, the mirrors warping, and he screamed, finally, a real sound, a sound that tore through the oppressive silence, and the figure recoiled slightly, as if hurt by his voice, giving him a small, fleeting window to escape. He bolted past the living shadows, the mirrors now cracked, fissures racing across the glass as though the room itself was breaking in anger. he collided with the door, and again the lock clicked open on its own. He flung it and ran into the alley, breathing ragged, heart hammering. The cold night air never felt so good, but even outside, the whispers clung to him, carried on the wind, and he knew he could never truly be free. That room 13 had claimed a part of him, a seed of fear that would grow, and as Jason stumbled toward the strip, he could see the faint glow of the club's neon sign, flickering almost as if waving, a silent invitation, a promise that it was patient, waiting for its next chance. The man who told me this story confirmed every detail, from the alley to the room to the shadows, insisting it was all true. And now, my friends, if you want to discover what happens when room 13 begins to follow Jason outside the club, how the terror escalates beyond the walls, and what unimaginable horrors await him in the next hours, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the true darkness of club number 13 and the final fate of Jason, and you will not want to miss it. Jason stumbled away from club number 13 into the neon-lit streets of the strip, heart still hammering from the terrifying encounter inside room 13, but even as he thought he was safe, the whispers followed him, faint at first, carried on the wind between the glowing signs and the distant hum of traffic, a soft echo that sounded eerily like his own voice calling back to him. He kept moving, weaving through tourists, street performers, and the never-ending flood of people, but every reflective surface, shop windows, polished car hoods, even puddles from a rare desert rain, seemed to ripple unnaturally, showing shadows crawling just beyond the edge of the glass, images of himself trapped, screaming silently, and the cold presence that had gripped him inside room 13 now seemed to trail him invisibly, tightening its grip on his senses. He could feel it breathing against his neck, a weight pressing on his chest, slowing his heart, making him stumble, and even when he ducked into a well-lit convenience store, the air felt heavy, the lights flickered as though trying to warn him. The cashier looked up, confused at his pale, trembling appearance, but Jason could only mutter, don't look, don't see it," and the shadows in the glass of the store doors seemed to shift in response, crawling closer, hungry, patient, a cold hand brushing against his arm though no one was there, and the whispers grew louder, more insistent, repeating the words he had heard inside the club, "Stay. Join. Forever," and he knew that the room had followed him into the city, that whatever lived in room 13 was not content to wait behind locked doors. It had claimed him now, its hunger extending beyond the walls. Jason ran through the streets, weaving through alleyways, trying to reach the relative safety of his apartment, the strip neon reflecting on wet pavement like fire as if mocking him, but the shadows were relentless, appearing in every reflective surface, creeping along the edges of his vision. The whispers now forming coherent sentences, recounting past victims, mocking him, telling him he was already marked, and when he finally reached the lobby of his apartment building, the normal warmth of the lights did little to comfort him. The elevator doors opened slowly, groaning as if in pain, and the moment he stepped in, the air turned icy, his breath visible, and the mirrors inside the elevator reflected the same twisted versions of himself he had seen in room 13, grinning, hollow-eyed, beckoning him toward the corners. And as the elevator climbed, Jason's mind raced, recalling the warnings, the bouncer, the dancer, the King of Spades card, the pulsing mirrors, the shadows that had nearly claimed him, and he realized that his life would never be the same. The fear had embedded itself, a parasite of the soul, feeding on every glance, every reflection, every late-night sound, and when the elevator reached his floor, the doors opened to his apartment hallway, dimly lit, he felt the presence just a step behind him, a whisper brushing his ear. "You can't escape." He froze, shivering, but forced himself forward, unlocking his apartment, rushing inside, slamming the door, and for a few seconds he thought he was safe, but then the mirrors in his apartment reflected movement that wasn't his own, the shadows stretching, pulsing, forming figures that lingered just behind his furniture, just beyond the glow of his lamp, and he realized with a chill that room 13 had followed him home, patient, watching, waiting for the next moment of weakness. That night Jason did not sleep, sitting on the edge of his bed, eyes fixed on every reflective surface, listening to every creak, every distant sound, fearing that the shadows would move if he looked away for even a second, the air thick, oppressive, whispering unintelligible threats, and at one point, He thought he saw a hand emerge from the corner of the living room mirror, thin, gray, curling fingers reaching toward him. And he flinched back, heart in his throat, and every instinct screamed at him to leave, to never go near that alley again, but even knowing that, he could feel the room inside him, the seed of fear planted in room 13, growing, feeding, waiting for the next time he would be alone, and the next night, Jason could feel the pull again, stronger this time, compelling him toward the club, and he had to fight it, because he knew that if he succumbed, there would be no turning back, and over the next few days, he noticed more signs, subtle at first, shadows where there should be none, reflections in his glasses of shapes that were not there, whispers when no one else was around, and he knew that the club, the room, had marked him, chosen him, and it would not let him go. The story he told me confirmed everything, every detail of the room, the alley, the shadows, the whispers, the way the mirrors moved and pulsed as if alive. And Jason was not exaggerating, he felt it, lived it, feared it every single day. And my friends, if you are watching this and you have ever experienced something strange, unexplainable, if you have ever felt shadows move when no one else was there, or whispers in empty rooms, I want you to tell me in the comments, share your story, because these things are real, they happen, and if you want to see more stories like Jason's, more accounts of places that are haunted, cursed, or terrifying, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on the notifications so you never miss a chilling story. And remember, sometimes what seems harmless, a night out, a birthday, a curious decision, can lead you straight into the heart of darkness, just like Jason and room 13, and the terror may follow you long after you think you have escaped. So comment, like, subscribe, and be prepared, because the next story might just happen closer to you than you think.